Death doesn't silence everybody. Sometimes it wakes the wrong people up. I learned that the moment my granddaughter's small voice cracked through the closing prayer at my daughter's funeral. It sliced clean through the pastor's words, through the sniffles, through the heavy quiet that hangs in a church when grief has worn everybody thin. Grandma, may I show you something? Not loud, not dramatic, but enough to pull the room's breath to a halt. The pastor lowered the Bible slowly, looking down at Layla like even he knew children don't interrupt funerals unless something inside them is trembling. She stepped forward with a phone in her hand, her father's phone. Her little fingers curled around it like she wasn't supposed to have it. My dad said you shouldn't see this, she whispered, voice shaking, but I think you need to. The pews creaked as people shifted. Someone gasped softly. A few women exchanged those tight, knowing glances older women make when they recognize a truth they've carried themselves. For a moment, I couldn't move. I was standing at my daughter's casket, Marissa's casket, already hollow from crying. But the fear in Layla's eyes, that reached deeper than any grief. She placed the phone in my hand. Her fingers were cold with the kind of fear children learn from watching adults too closely. My name is Deborah Hills, and in that moment, I felt something old in me sit up straight, bracing for a truth I never thought would find me here. I pressed play. Christopher's face filled the screen, calm, almost bored. No yelling, no slammed doors, just a controlled, icy tone that chilled the whole church. If you walk out, he said, I'll take everything you own. Silence spread through the room like a storm cloud. You won't embarrass me with a divorce. Don't drag your mother into our marriage. His voice stayed low, too low, the kind of low that isn't meant for conversation. It's meant for control. Behind him, barely audible, was my daughter's voice. Not screaming, not arguing, just quietly crying the way a woman cries when she's trying not to make anything worse. That sound pulled the world out from under me. Layla pressed into my leg, her tiny shoulder trembling. Grandma, Mommy didn't like when Daddy talked like that. Her whisper nearly broke me. Family, if you're listening to this part, show me you're here. Drop a heart in the comments so I know you're holding space with me. Across the aisle, 3 women were whispering to each other, shaking their heads, not confused, not surprised, recognizing the way women recognize a marriage that hasn't been healthy for a long time. Before I could speak, Christopher shot up from the front pew, face stiff, tie shaking under his hand. It was just a disagreement, he muttered. Every couple argues. Deborah, don't start something at a funeral. Sit down, the pastor said. Quiet, sharp, a command wrapped in scripture steel. Christopher's eyes flicked around the room, waiting for someone to defend him. No one did. He didn't take the phone back, didn't comfort his daughter, didn't even look at the video still playing in my hand. The room wasn't looking at him anymore. It was looking at me, at my reaction, at the truth unraveling in real time. I stopped the video and knelt in front of Layla. Baby, why did you want me to see this? Her lips trembled. She clasped her hands behind her back to hide the shaking. That gesture alone gutted me, that learned quiet fear. Because she whispered, voice breaking, I'm not scared of disagreements. I'm scared of that. Her eyes drifted toward the video, toward her father, toward everything my daughter never told me. And right there, surrounded by flowers and hymns and the weight of my child's absence, something shifted inside me, clean, sharp, undeniable. She's not scared of disagreements. I didn't go straight to bed after the funeral. Grief usually knocks a person flat, but that night it kept me standing, pacing, moving through my own house like my feet couldn't remember the meaning of rest. The only light came from the lamp by the sofa, warm but too dim to chase the chills sitting on my chest. Layla curled up at the other end of the couch, knees tucked under her chin, the sleeves of her little sweater bunched around her hands. I unlocked Christopher's phone. He hadn't even bothered to change the passcode, and pressed play again. His voice filled the quiet room instantly. Cold, smooth, controlled. The kind of tone a man uses when he knows he doesn't need to raise it to get what he wants. If you walk out, I'll take everything you own. There was no hesitation in him, no quiver, no remorse, just certainty. But Marissa, her voice wasn't the voice of a woman in a simple argument. There was a break in it, so small most people would miss it. A tiny shake, like her breath tripped over fear. She didn't want him to hear. That shake, that's what held me. That's what tightened something deep in me. I'd heard my daughter cry before, as a child, as a teenager, but never like this. Never trying to keep the crying inside her throat so it wouldn't come out and make the situation worse. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the audio wash over me again. The sound of her breathing told the story the words didn't. A woman worn thin. A woman tired down to her fingertips. A woman holding herself together in a home that no longer felt like home. When I opened my eyes, Layla had shifted closer without saying a word, not touching me, just moving nearer like she needed to shorten the space between us to keep herself steady. Her little eyes weren't on the phone. They were on the front door. She kept glancing at it every few minutes, shoulders tightening, hands twisting the ends of her sweater sleeves. "Baby," I said softly, "you're safe here." She nodded too fast, the way children do when they want to agree, before they believe. But her eyes didn't leave that door. That was when something sank into me deeper than the funeral, deeper than the video. My granddaughter wasn't waiting for a ghost. She was waiting for a man who trained her to expect footsteps that brought tension, not comfort. I paused the video and set the phone on the coffee table. "Come sit by me," I whispered. She hesitated. Only a second, but hesitation in a child tells more truth than any adult confession. When she finally slid close, I wrapped my arms around her and felt how stiff she was, how her little body didn't melt into mine the way children usually do. She held herself like someone who'd learned to be ready. "I didn't mean to make trouble," she murmured. My heart cracked. I lowered my cheek onto her hair. "You didn't make trouble, Layla. You told the truth." She swallowed hard. Daddy doesn't like when people hear Mommy cry. That sentence landed like a weight I wasn't strong enough to lift. I didn't ask her any more. I didn't press her. Children reveal what they can handle, not what they know. But her words stayed in the room with us, sitting heavy on the walls, louder than the silence between us. I picked up the phone again and hit play, listening closely, not to Christopher this time, but to Marissa, to every tremble in her breath, every pause, every quiet exhale that sounded like she was shrinking herself smaller. And when I heard her whisper, "Please stop," it wasn't pleading. It was the sound of someone trying not to break where anyone could see. My jaw tightened. My fingers curled. There was no outrunning what I heard, no explaining it away, no soothing it with excuses or grief. I looked at Layla, how she watched that door like danger lived behind it. Right then, in that dim living room, I understood something with a clarity that left no space for denial. I cannot pretend this is normal. I didn't sleep. When morning came, the house felt too still, like it was waiting for me to choose the next breath on purpose. Layla was upstairs in Marissa's old room, curled under blankets that still smelled faintly like lavender. I kept listening for her footsteps, her voice, anything that proved she was resting and not pacing with fear the way she did last night. By 8:30, I already knew what I had to do. Grief doesn't stop a mother from fighting. It sharpens her. I searched until I found someone who understood the kind of harm that doesn't leave marks. His name was Mr. Carter, a private investigator whose specialty wasn't catching criminals, but recognizing patterns, emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, the quiet kind of damage that hides behind polite smiles and well-kept homes. He agreed to meet me that same afternoon. His office sat above an insurance agency, plain brown carpet, a window facing the parking lot, and a faint smell of old coffee. Nothing about the room looked dramatic, and that comforted me. I didn't need drama. I needed clarity. I placed Christopher's phone on his desk and slid it toward him. My hand shook only once. "I need you to tell me what this is," I said. He watched the video without comment, leaning forward slowly as the audio played. When Marissa's trembling breath filled the room, I felt my own lungs tighten. Even though I'd heard it twice already, hearing it in front of a stranger made it harsher, more undeniable. He stopped the video halfway through. "You can leave it here," he said gently. "I've heard enough from the tone alone." I nodded, but my voice didn't come. Not right away. I tried to ask my next question, but the words came out softer than I meant. Layla was 2 floors up at home. Not here, but saying certain things loudly felt wrong, like my granddaughter might somehow hear through the walls. "Is this normal arguing?" I nearly whispered. He studied me carefully, not judging, just observing. "People argue," he said. "Couples disagree. But this." He tapped the phone lightly. "This is control. He's not raising his voice because he doesn't need to. It's calculated." A small chill moved down my arms. I hadn't even realized I was wringing my hands until he glanced at them, and I forced them still. I cleared my throat. "My daughter never said anything was wrong." "She wouldn't," he replied gently. "Most women in her situation don't. They think keeping quiet protects the child. They think minimizing the problem stops it from getting bigger." That slid through me like truth I wasn't ready for, because that was exactly the kind of silence Marissa grew up watching. Not violence, just the kind of swallowed tension women learn to live with. I leaned back, suddenly aware of the weight sitting on my chest. She sounded. I stopped, choosing my words with care. Not like herself. Her voice shook. He finished. "Yes, I heard it." He reached for a notebook, not rushing, not pushing. "Tell me about the past few months. Anything unusual?" So I did, but every detail felt like I was tiptoeing inside my own story. I spoke quietly, too quietly, because something in me kept acting like Layla might hear. She wasn't here, but I still lowered my voice, still softened my tone, still protected the air the way Marissa must have done in her own home. And that realization made my heart curl inward. Mr. Carter noticed. You're whispering because you've already started carrying her silence. He said softly, that's common for mothers who sense the truth before they admit it. I pressed my palm flat against my thigh to steady myself. I just want to know what she was living with. He glanced at the phone again. The frozen image of Christopher's emotionless face paused mid-threat. I'll run full checks, messages, deleted files, financial changes, records. Then he looked at me directly. His voice stayed calm, but firm. The way someone speaks when they know the truth is heavier than the words. From the way your daughter reacted in that video, he said quietly, this wasn't isolated. Mr. Carter called the next morning. His voice carried that quiet seriousness people use when they're holding something fragile in their hands. Mrs. Hills, he said, you should come in. I found something in your daughter's cloud backup. My stomach tightened. The ride to his office felt longer than yesterday, though it was the same straight road lined with the same old sycamores. Grief has a way of stretching distance, making every turn feel like it's dragging something behind it. He had the screen pulled up when I walked in. One window open. One sentence highlighted. It's an unsent email, he explained gently. It was saved as a draft, time-stamped 3 weeks before she passed. My breath snagged, not from shock, but from something older, fear of seeing my daughter's private pain, fear of what she tried to endure alone. He turned the laptop toward me. Take your time. The email wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. Sometimes the shortest words hold the heaviest truth. Mom, I'm sorry I haven't been around much. I'm tired, just tired in a way I can't fix with sleep. The cursor blinked after that sentence like her fingers had hovered there, struggling with what came next. My throat tightened. I could almost picture her sitting at her kitchen table, back slumped, hands shaking, deleting and retyping until the truth grew soft enough not to cause alarm. She'd type a word, erase it, type something gentler. Sad became tired. Lonely became nothing. Scared, never made it onto the page at all. I leaned closer, reading her hesitations. It was like reading between the lines of her breathing. I noticed how she wrote this. I murmured. She was trying not to worry me. Mr. Carter nodded. A lot of women in emotionally coercive marriages minimize their feelings to avoid escalation. This email shows she was walking on emotional eggshells. He didn't have to say what else it showed. I felt it, the mirror she never meant to hold up to me, because I recognized something in the way she held back. I recognized myself, the version of me she saw growing up. The version that taught her pain should be softened before it's spoken. My chest ached with regret, so sharp it made me sit back. Scrolling downward, I saw more. I don't feel like myself anymore. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing in my own house. Her words were quiet, but they pressed into me with the force of a confession she never got to speak out loud. She deleted a line, then rewrote it weaker. I think I need help, but I don't know how to ask. My eyes stung. My daughter had been drowning in silence. The same silence I once used to survive my own troubles, thinking I was showing strength, not realizing she watched me shrink to keep peace and learn to do the same. I reached out and touched the laptop screen, my finger lingering on the unfinished sentence. Why didn't you send it? I whispered to myself, not as a question, just grief finding a place to land. Mr. Carter closed the laptop halfway, giving me a moment. Drafts like this show intent. She wanted to reach out. She just wasn't ready to break the pattern she'd been living in. A long breath moved through me, heavy and slow. I wasn't angry at her. I wasn't even angry at myself. I was angry at the quiet expectations that teach women to swallow storms and smile through thunder. He opened the laptop again. There's one more line at the bottom. He said, I think you should read it. I steadied myself, leaned forward, and there it was, the last thing she wrote before closing her laptop that day. I need to make a change, but I'm scared to start. Mr. Carter didn't waste time. He called the county clerk's office the same day. We reviewed the email, his voice steady, polite, and deliberate. I sat across from him, hands clasped tightly in my lap, watching the tension in his jaw as he listened. When he finally hung up the phone, he exhaled the kind of breath that tells you the truth is about to shift the ground under your feet. She filed for divorce, Mrs. Hills, he said quietly, 2 weeks before she passed. My heart didn't drop. It folded in on itself. Slow, painful, collapsing inward like something already cracked. Divorce. My daughter. My sweet, soft-spoken Marissa, who always tried to talk through things, who believed in gentle solutions even when the world was rough. I gripped the edge of his desk. She didn't tell me. Many women don't, he said, especially when they're trying to stay strong for their child, or when they're unsure what reaction they'll get from their spouse. He printed out the documents, laying each page on the desk with care. I stared at Marissa's signature, small and tight at the bottom, her handwriting shrinking the way she had shrunk inside that marriage. The reasons were listed plainly: emotional distance, constant arguments, financial disagreements, nothing dramatic, nothing loud, nothing anyone would recognize as danger unless they'd lived it. I traced my finger along her reasons, my breath trembling. She was trying to get out. Quietly, Mr. Carter said, that tells me she was afraid of the emotional fallout, even if she didn't label it as fear. Something inside me ached, not with surprise, but with recognition, the kind of quiet fear a woman lives with long enough to mistake it for normal. When I got home, I went into Marissa's old room. Her purse sat on the closet shelf where Christopher had placed her things after the funeral, zipped shut like it was guarding her secrets. I took it down carefully, the leather warm from the afternoon sun, and placed it on her bed. The first thing I found was her wallet, driver's license, a few receipts, Layla's school picture tucked behind her credit card. Normal things. Everyday things. The kind of items a mother carries without thinking. Then I found it. A crumpled envelope, addressed to me, in her handwriting. My name curled across the front, faint and shaky. When I opened it, the inside was empty. No letter, no note, no explanation. Just emptiness, like she tried to speak to me, but couldn't get the words out. I sat down on her bed, holding that envelope like it was the last piece of her courage. My thumb brushed over the crease marks, and I could feel the moments she must have folded and unfolded it, trying, backing out, trying again. Marissa had wanted to tell me. She just couldn't bring herself to hurt anyone, not even the man who was hurting her. A quiet sound escaped my throat, something between grief and guilt. I wasn't angry at her. I wasn't even angry at myself. I was angry at the world that teaches women to apologize for wanting peace. I placed the envelope gently on the pillow, right where her head used to rest. Then I sat there in the silence, listening to the house breathe around me, listening to my granddaughter playing with her dolls in the next room, innocent, unaware of how much truth she had already carried. My phone buzzed. It was Mr. Carter. His voice was low, measured, but there was a heaviness underneath it. I pulled her financial timeline. He said, "And, Deborah, you need to come back tomorrow." My chest tightened. "Why?" He paused, long enough for dread to settle, because right after filing, he said slowly something happened to her finances. By the time I sat back down in Mr. Carter's office, I was tired in a way that didn't belong to age. It belonged to discovery, the kind that peels back one layer of your child's life at a time and dares you to keep looking. He had a folder open on his desk. Not thick, just a few pages clipped together. It still looked heavier than it should. I pulled her bank activity for the month before she died. He said, and especially the weeks after she filed. He turned the first page toward me. Highlighted lines ran down the statement like someone had dragged a yellow highlighter through her last days, leaving a trail of decisions she never got to explain. Their joint account, he pointed, was steady for months. Normal bills, groceries, gas, small purchases. Then, about 3 days after the divorce filing, his finger moved. Large transfers start leaving the account. I leaned closer. The numbers blurred for a moment under my eyes, then sharpened. 2,000 here, 1,500 there. Withdrawals labeled as internal transfers, moving money from the joint account into another account in Christopher's name. It wasn't a crime by itself. Married people move money, but this wasn't a slow shift. It was a sweep. They drained almost everything. I murmured, "In 2 weeks." "Most of it," he said. "There are also 2 new credit lines opened with her name attached, but the spending on them doesn't match her usual pattern. High charges close together. Electronics, furniture, all delivered to the house." I closed my eyes briefly. I could picture it, packages arriving, receipts stacking up, Christopher calling it household stuff, while Marissa quietly watched debt pile in her name. People who feel control slipping often tighten their grip financially, Mr. Carter said. If she was leaving, he knew the one thing he could hold over her was money. A part of me wanted to argue on Christopher's behalf, to say he was grieving too, that maybe there was another explanation. But the truth had already started building a wall in my chest. Every new brick made defending him feel like betraying her. "I found something else," he added, "small deposits into a separate account. Not much, but consistent. That account was in her name only." The words sank slowly. My baby had been trying to build a life raft out of nickels and dimes while the man she married scooped buckets out of the boat. Tears pressed behind my eyes, hot and stubborn. She was trying to stand on her own. He nodded, quietly. When I went home that afternoon, I walked straight to Marissa's closet again. Grief had taught me now that her things weren't just belongings. They were evidence of the life she tried to shape for herself and her child. On the top shelf, behind an old shoebox of photos, I found another box, plain, with a rubber band holding the lid. Inside were folded receipts, some yellowed from time, others fresh. I sat on the floor and spread them out across the carpet. Most were small, school notebooks, kids' socks, hair bows. Then I saw it, a printed slip from the school district payment portal. Lunch account, Layla Winston. The payment had come from a card I didn't recognize. different from the joint account number on all the other household bills I'd seen over the years. My heart tightened. Marissa had been using her own hidden debit card to fund her daughter's meals, quietly separating what fed her child from what controlled her home, saving in one place while another account bled. I pressed that little receipt between my fingers like it was made of glass. My daughter had been planning a future where she could make sure her child ate without asking permission, a future that never got the chance to exist. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Carter. I've reviewed the authorization forms for the transfers. Some of them look off. Can you come back in the morning? When I returned the next day, he had copies of the bank forms lined up. These required signatures from your daughter. He said, some look like her usual handwriting, but others... He pointed at one where her name slanted harder than normal, letters cramped together like they were holding their breath. Another where the strokes were shaky, as if written in a rush or under pressure. I can't say for certain yet, he said slowly, but these don't all look like calm, willing signatures. Some of them look coerced, or written by someone whose hand wasn't steady. His eyes lifted to meet mine. Honestly, Deborah, he murmured, these look like panicked signatures. Mr. Carter arranged for a handwriting analysis the following afternoon. I didn't know what to expect walking into that office, just that every step felt heavier than the last. Grief on its own will drag a person, but grief mixed with suspicion, that's a different weight entirely. The analyst, a quiet woman named Ms. Reeves, had several sheets of paper laid out on a long wooden table when we arrived. Some were Marissa's old documents, her driver's license renewal, a medical form from Layla's pediatrician visit, even a signature from a school permission slip she'd signed last fall. Next to them were the newer documents, account transfers, authorization pages, forms tied to the rushed financial changes. I didn't sit at first. I stood there, fingers trembling near my sides, afraid to move, afraid to see, afraid not to see. Take your time, Ms. Reeves said softly. I stepped closer to the table. My heart tightened. Marissa's old signatures looked like her. Rounded loops, steady lines, a soft flourish at the end of her last name. She had practiced her handwriting as a child for hours, sitting at our kitchen table with colored pencils, drawing her name over and over until every letter sat perfectly. She used to make me grade her penmanship like a teacher. Seeing that confident script again sent a rush of warmth through me, the kind that comes seconds before the cold hits. Because right next to those signatures sat the new ones. Sharp, rushed, angled too far to the right. Letters squeezed together like they were afraid to take up space. Here, Ms. Reeves pointed gently. The pen lifts too quickly. She traced the line with a pencil. That's not natural for someone with her usual flow. My throat tightened. I remembered her handwriting perfectly. Even as an adult, she wrote the way she lived, patiently, carefully, taking her time to get things right. But these new signatures didn't look like they belonged to my child at all. They looked like the writing of a woman who wasn't steady when she picked up the pen, a woman whose hand shook, a woman rushing, not by choice, but by something pressing in. Ms. Reeves laid another set of forms beside them. This one, she said softly, shows hesitation. See the stop and start motion? I leaned closer. There it was, the hesitation mark, a tiny stutter where the pen paused in the middle of her name. My stomach dropped. She wouldn't pause in her own name. Not unless something made her. I swallowed hard. Could stress cause that? Absolutely, the analyst replied. Stress, pressure, fear, even emotional tension. When someone signs under discomfort, their hand betrays it. I closed my eyes briefly. That answer cut deeper than any accusation. I didn't want to imagine my daughter signing anything under fear. But the evidence was right there, ink on paper that trembled like a confession she never gave with words. The analyst continued in a calm, non-judgmental tone. Some signatures are authentic, but strained. Others, I can't confirm. They look inconsistent. The speed is wrong. The weight is wrong. And the ones you can confirm? I asked quietly, opening my eyes again. She motioned toward 3 signatures. These are hers. But in all 3, her hand was shaking. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Because in that moment, I wasn't looking at signatures. I was looking at pieces of my daughter breaking quietly inside her own home. Mr. Carter put a hand on the back of a nearby chair, steadying his voice. We're not saying she was physically forced, but these forms don't show a willing, calm signer. They show someone rushed, someone anxious, someone overwhelmed, or scared. I stared at the papers again, seeing not ink, but the memory of my little girl at 7 years old, proudly writing her name in wide loops, telling me she wanted handwriting as pretty as Mommy's. And now this. My chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. I touched the edge of one shaky signature with the tip of my finger, tracing the tremble in a line that should have been straight. What was happening to you, baby? I whispered under my breath. What were you carrying alone? Neither of them answered. They didn't have to. Ms. Reeves gathered the papers carefully, stacking them like fragile pieces of truth. I'll compile the full report, she said gently, but based on what I see, these signatures weren't made in peace. My heart dropped, slow and heavy. A mother knows when fear hides beneath the skin of something. A mother feels the echoes even after the sound is gone. As we walked out of the office, Mr. Carter paused beside me, lowering his voice with a weight that pulled the moment tight. Deborah, he said quietly, we have to ask ourselves something now. I looked at him, bracing for it. Was she overwhelmed? He murmured. Or scared of something escalating? I thought I'd grown numb to new information, but truth has a way of finding nerves you didn't know were exposed. When Mr. Carter suggested talking to Marissa's neighbors, I expected polite condolences, maybe a few vague comments about how quiet the couple had seemed. I wasn't prepared for anything more. But grief keeps teaching me I'm always less prepared than I think. We drove to her neighborhood just after noon. The street was lined with young maple trees, their leaves rustling in the wind like whispers passing down the block. Nothing about the houses looked dangerous or chaotic. Everything looked ordinary, painfully ordinary. A woman from 2 doors down agreed to speak with us. She held her keys in one hand the whole time, fiddling with them like the conversation tugged at something she'd buried. I heard them the night before. She began softly, not yelling, just raised voices. When 2 people try to stay calm, but the frustration spills through anyway. Her eyes flicked toward the Winstons' house, as if she could still see the echo of that night in the driveway. She kept saying she needed space. I remember that. I just need space. And then the door closed. Hard, not slammed, but enough to sound like a line being drawn. My breath caught. I could picture Marissa standing in that hallway, rubbing her temples, trying to survive another round of tension she didn't want to escalate. The neighbor swallowed. She walked outside a few minutes later. No shoes, no coat, just walked to the end of the driveway, crying quietly. I almost went to her, but she looked like she needed to be alone more than she needed company. Barefoot, in October, my daughter. A slow ache filled my chest. Did she say anything? I asked gently. Not then, the woman replied. But there was another time. Her voice dropped lower, a confession rising to the surface. She once told me, I don't want to fight anymore. I just need peace. Not in a dramatic way. She wasn't crying then. She said it like she was admitting something to herself. The sentence hit me so hard I had to grip the arm of the porch chair. Because those were my words years ago in another house to another man who never raised a hand but raised tension like a wall between us. I said the same thing to my sister one night, a lifetime ago. I don't want to fight anymore. I just need peace. My daughter had grown up with that sentence in her ear, and somehow she wandered into a life where she had to whisper it too. I closed my eyes. The kind of pain that reaches backwards and forwards at the same time is the hardest kind. Mr. Carter thanked the woman, and we stepped back into the street. The sun was bright, but I felt cold. Memories pressed against me. Marissa as a child asking me why I always whispered when I was upset. Me telling her it was better to keep the peace than disturb the house. She learned that silence from me, and it might have cost her more than I ever imagined. As we reached the driveway of her home, Mr. Carter held up his phone. The timestamp I got from the neighbor matches something interesting. He said, traffic cams picked up her phone location around that same time. My eyes lifted. Where was she? He tapped his screen. Still here. She stayed outside longer than the neighbor realized. The camera caught her at 9:47 p.m. walking down the sidewalk. He turned the phone so I could see the grainy footage, a distant silhouette, arms folded tight, shoulders shaking. Crying. The word landed like a closing door. Not loud. Final. We left the neighbor's porch with the weight of her words still clinging to us like humidity. I didn't say much on the walk back to the car. Some truths don't need responses. They carve their own place inside you. Mr. Carter didn't push me to talk either. He simply unlocked the passenger door and waited for me to settle before pulling out his tablet. I pulled traffic cam footage from that same night, he said as we sat parked along the curb in front of Marissa's house. After she walked down the street, she got in her car. I turned toward him slowly. Show me. He tapped the screen. The video was grainy, black and white, the kind of footage meant more for catching speeders than capturing the final hours of a woman quietly braking. But there she was, Marissa stepping into her sedan, shoulders hunched, wiping her face with the sleeve of her shirt. Barefoot, hair loose, moving like her body was heavier than it should have been. My breath tightened as the car pulled away from the curb. Timestamp, 10:03 p.m., he said softly. Another camera caught her turning at the end of the block, headlights sweeping across empty pavement. She didn't speed. She didn't hesitate. She just drove, like she'd done it 1,000 times after long dinners, school pickups, or grocery runs. Only this night, the loneliness inside that car reached through the screen. Can you zoom in a little? I asked quietly. He did. The image sharpened enough for me to see the outline of her face illuminated faintly by the dashboard. But what hollowed something inside my chest, was the passenger seat. Empty. Not a coat. Not a bag. Not a second presence. Nothing but a wide, open seat beside her. I stared at it for so long I felt the sting behind my eyes. She looked so alone. She was driving to get away from tension. Mr. Carter said, "A lot of emotional abuse survivors do that, short drives to breathe." But I barely heard him. My focus stayed on that empty seat. I imagined Marissa's soft voice, barely audible, talking to herself the way women do when they're trying to convince themselves of courage. Maybe I should leave. Maybe I should stay. Maybe he'll calm down. Maybe I deserve peace. Maybe I'm making it worse. The thoughts played in my mind as if she spoke them aloud in that car. And I realized that empty seat wasn't just empty. It was symbolic, a reflection of how alone she felt inside her own marriage. My fingers dug into the armrest. She didn't have anyone to talk to in that moment. Not me, not a friend, not a sister, not even herself in the way women talk to themselves when they feel safe. She had only silence and her shaking breath and the night. The next camera showed her at a traffic light, tapping her thumb against the steering wheel, an old habit she had when she was nervous. She used to do it as a little girl during thunderstorms, sitting beside me on the couch, tapping rhythms on my arm to calm herself. She was still doing it at 34. Alone. At 10:15 at night, I pressed a hand to my chest because it felt like my heart had slipped. She stayed out for about 40 minutes, Mr. Carter said gently. Her car was picked up 4 more times by cameras along the route. Did she go anywhere? He hesitated, then tapped another icon. A map opened, dotted with time-stamped locations. One pin glowed brighter than the others. She made one stop. He zoomed in. Just one. The address appeared. My stomach clenched when I read it. A pharmacy. What time? I asked, though my voice barely came out. 10:41 p.m., he replied. She parked for 11 minutes. The number hit me with a quiet, cruel precision. 11 minutes. Not long enough for casual shopping. Not short enough to simply sit in the car. 11 minutes meant purpose, need, pain. She tried to manage alone. He tapped the GPS marker again, letting the red pin pulse softly on the screen. She stopped there, Deborah, he said softly. The pharmacy. The sight of that pulsing marker made something inside me sink all the way to the pit of my stomach, because people don't go to pharmacies at night unless something is wrong, something their heart is whispering louder than their fear. I stared at the screen, my pulse in my ears, my palms damp with grief. And right then, I knew that stop mattered. By the next morning, I knew we had to visit the pharmacy ourselves. I didn't want secondhand reports or printed receipts. I needed to stand where my daughter stood, breathe the same air she breathed, feel the truth the room might still be holding. The drive there felt unreal. The closer we got, the more the world outside the window blurred. Cars moving, lights changing, people living ordinary days, while mine felt like it was unraveling thread by thread. The pharmacy sat on a corner lot beside a laundromat, its fluorescent logo humming faintly in the daylight. A quiet, unremarkable place. The kind you'd never think twice about unless your child spent her last hours walking through its sliding doors. Inside, the smell of disinfectant and cold air hit me first. Mr. Carter went to the counter. I stayed a few feet back, afraid my legs might give out if I stood too close. "Good morning," he said to the pharmacist, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a neat bun. "We're looking into a visit made last Thursday night. A woman named Marissa Hillswinston." The pharmacist frowned, thinking. Then something softened in her expression. "I remember her." My heart lurched. She nodded slowly. She came in close to closing time. Looked not sick exactly, just exhausted, like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Her words wrapped around me, heavy and warm and painful. She bought stress relief supplements. The woman continued. Heartburn medication, too. The over-the-counter kind. She said she'd been having discomfort in her chest and trouble sleeping. Chest discomfort, the beginning of something fatal. I dug my nails into my palms to steady myself. She also dropped her ID. The pharmacist said gently, twice. Her hands were shaking. I had to pick it up for her. My breath slipped out in a sharp, silent exhale. I could see it, Marissa trying to stabilize her trembling fingers, apologizing softly the way she always did, trying not to call attention to herself, even in distress. She kept rubbing her sternum. The woman added, touching her own chest. Right here. She said she thought it was stress. I closed my eyes, feeling something inside me fold in on itself. My daughter had walked into this pharmacy seeking relief, trying to soothe pain she didn't know was whispering something much louder. Stress-triggered cardiac issues don't announce themselves with sirens. They creep in, quiet and deadly. When I opened my eyes again, the pharmacist was looking at me with sympathy that tasted like grief. She was very polite. She said softly, and very tired. I remember thinking she needed rest more than medicine. I wish I'd asked if she had someone to drive her home. Mr. Carter thanked her, and we stepped outside. The air hit me harder than I expected, as if the truth inside that pharmacy had weight. She was trying to take care of herself. I murmured. She was trying. He nodded. She was. But stress can mimic heart attacks. It can accelerate arrhythmias, especially when it builds over time. I stared at the parking lot. Did she get worse when she got home? He hesitated, long enough to tell me he wasn't deciding whether to lie, but choosing how to soften the truth. I pulled the emergency call records. He finally said, she collapsed sometime after returning home. My chest tightened. And Christopher? Mr. Carter looked at me with a stillness that chilled the skin on my arms. He was with her, but he didn't call 911 right away. The world around me seemed to tilt. How long? His voice dropped, steady and low, carrying a weight that made every breath feel heavy. 22 minutes. The number dropped through me like a stone in deep water. 22 minutes of hesitation. 22 minutes of hoping symptoms would pass. 22 minutes where her body needed help, and she didn't get it. A hollow ache spread across my chest. Because 22 minutes is enough time to save someone, or lose them. When Mr. Carter laid the timeline across his desk, the paper didn't look dangerous. It was just ink and numbers, little timestamps arranged in neat rows. But the moment my eyes landed on the line marked 22 minutes, something cold tightened around my ribs. Deborah, he said softly, this is the sequence of events from the moment she got home until the 911 call was placed. I leaned forward, My palms were flat on my knees, as if bracing myself against the weight of what I was about to see. He pointed to the first timestamp, 10:54 p.m. Marissa arrives home. Then the next line, 11:03 p.m. Phone movement stops, likely when she sat or collapsed. My breath hitched. Then further down, the line that split the page like a wound, 11:25 p.m., 911 call finally placed by Christopher. 22 minutes. 22 minutes where she needed help. 22 minutes when the man who claimed to love her stood inches from saving her or losing her. Mr. Carter slid another sheet toward me. This is where things get revealing. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading. But then the words sharpened into something unmistakably cruel. Outbound messages from Christopher's phone during those same minutes. Texts to a coworker. 11:11 p.m. I don't want more drama tonight. 11:17 p.m. I'm done arguing for the day. 11:20 p.m. I'll deal with everything tomorrow. He never once mentioned Marissa collapsing. Not a word about her pain. Not even a hint that something was wrong. My mouth went dry. He was texting while she was struggling to breathe. Yes, Mr. Carter replied, steady and grave. He prioritized cooling off over checking her symptoms. That delay matters. With stress-induced arrhythmia, minutes can be life or death. I didn't trust myself to speak. My hands shook as I traced the times again and again, trying to make sense of how a man could watch a woman he lived with, slept beside, built a family with, fall into distress and respond with indifference. He didn't think it was serious, Mr. Carter continued gently. Men like Christopher often minimize emotional or physical symptoms because they're used to dismissing the cause, their own behavior. I clenched my jaw. He didn't want to admit she was suffering because of him. Exactly. Silence sat between us, thick and painful. My daughter wasn't killed by violence. Her life wasn't taken suddenly or dramatically. It slipped away in a room where help stood inches away, but chose not to move. And that, somehow, hurt worse than any forced explanation. When I got home, Layla was sitting at the kitchen table drawing in a spiral notebook. Crayons scattered, her hair in a loose ponytail that she kept patting the way little girls do when they're trying to stay calm. "Grandma," she said as soon as I walked in, "are you okay?" I took a slow breath, kneeling beside her. "I will be, baby. I'm just thinking about Mommy." She nodded, her crayon hovering above the paper. "I think about her too." The innocence in her voice nearly broke me. I swallowed hard and touched her back gently. "Did Mommy seem sick before that night?" It wasn't a leading question, just a mother searching for pieces her daughter didn't leave behind. Layla didn't answer right away. She colored a single line, blue, shaky, then put the crayon down. "Grandma?" she whispered. "Yes, baby." She looked up at me with eyes too young to hold the memory she carried. Mommy said her chest hurt the night before. My breath stopped. The line didn't come out dramatic. It didn't come out rehearsed. It came out soft, a child repeating something she shouldn't have had to understand. And the moment those words reached me, I understood something terrifyingly clear. The signs were there. The pain was there. The warning was there. And the man who lived beside her ignored all of it. By the time we reached Mr. Carter's office again, the truth felt less like a search and more like a slow unfolding. each layer revealing another corner of my daughter's silent suffering. I sat across from him, hands laced tightly, as he opened a new folder with the same careful precision he'd used for everything else. "Deborah," he said gently, "what we found next doesn't point to a crime, but it does point to cruelty." I braced myself. He turned the laptop toward me. A screen lit up with search history, Marissa's. The timestamps were spaced out over days, some at midnight, some at 2 or 3 in the morning. Searches typed in small, fearful bursts. How long can stress make your chest hurt? Is stress supposed to make breathing hard? Can stress keep you awake for days? How do I calm my heart down? Is divorce too risky for kids? My vision blurred. I blinked quickly, pressing a hand to my chest. There is a specific kind of grief reserved for mothers who realized their children were drowning silently while smiling at them across dinner tables. "She Googled these alone?" I whispered. Mr. Carter nodded. "Over several days. These weren't spur-of-the-moment searches. She was living with symptoms and fear." I covered my mouth. She was trying to understand what was happening to her body instead of going to a doctor. "Because she had no emotional safety," he said. "People don't seek medical help when they're being dismissed at home. They seek the next best thing, answers that won't cause conflict." The truth stung like salt in an open wound. Marissa had been looking for permission to take care of herself, and she never found it. Mr. Carter clicked another file. This is what Christopher deleted from his phone. Messages he removed after her death. Not incriminating, but revealing. A string from weeks earlier. "Marissa, my chest feels tight again." "Christopher, it's anxiety. Stop overreacting." Then another. "Marissa, I can't sleep. I feel off." "Christopher, because you won't let things go." The final one. "Marissa, I feel like something is wrong with me." "Christopher, you're fine. Go lie down." My fingers curled against my knee. He made her doubt her own body. "Yes," he said softly. Consistently. I felt the heat rising at the back of my throat, the kind that comes when grief turns into something sharper. "He wasn't malicious," Mr. Carter continued, "but he was selfish, emotionally negligent. He minimized her symptoms, dismissed her distress, and downplayed the warning signs. That doesn't meet the legal threshold for homicide." He paused. "But it absolutely contributed to the environment that killed her." I stared at the screen again. My daughter typing desperate questions into the dark. Her husband deleting messages that made him look insensitive. Her symptoms escalating silently inside a home where she couldn't afford to alarm anyone. I pressed a hand to the laptop screen, barely touching the glowing text. She was asking for help in the only way she thought were allowed. He nodded. "Exactly." I looked away, breathing slow and controlled. The office suddenly felt small, like the walls had drawn closer to make room for the weight inside me. Mr. Carter stood and crossed to the whiteboard, drawing a single line. "Here's the medical examiner's conclusion again," he said, writing the words carefully. "Stress-induced cardiac arrhythmia." Then he added, "delayed response." And under that, dismissed symptoms. "This," he said, tapping the board, "is how emotional coercion kills. Not violently, quietly, with stress hormones the body can't shut off, with panic that never resolves, with symptoms ignored until the heart gives out." His voice stayed steady as he looked me in the eyes. He didn't kill her, but his choices, his dismissals, his delays. My chest tightened. He acted like she was exaggerating. I said, my voice barely above a whisper, like her fear was just drama. And that, he said, his tone firm, now, is what cost her precious time. And maybe her life. The room felt still, too still. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just sat with the truth, letting it settle into the part of me that would never be the same. Finally, Mr. Carter sat back down, his face solemn. Deborah, he said quietly, I need you to hear this clearly. I looked at him, my heartbeat slow and painful in my ears. His choices contributed to her death. By the time Mr. Carter called me back in, the investigation no longer felt like digging through paperwork. It felt like peeling back the walls of my daughter's life, one truth at a time, until there was nothing left but what she had actually lived through. Not what she showed me, not what she hoped, not what she tried to survive quietly. He had everything laid out on the conference table. The divorce filing, the financial shifts, the coerced signatures, the stress symptoms, the 22-minute delay, the searches she made alone in the dark, a whole map of a marriage unraveling in slow motion. Deborah, he began gently, this is the complete picture. I sat down slowly. My knees felt unsteady, but my spine held straight, somewhere between grief and something growing harder inside me. He walked me through it piece by piece. She was preparing to leave. He said, not impulsively, carefully, quietly. She was making small financial steps, looking for answers, trying to keep the peace long enough to plan her exit. My throat tightened. She was scared of upsetting him. Yes, she didn't identify it as abuse, but she knew something was wrong. She knew she couldn't breathe emotionally. She was trying to build a path out. That word, breathe, cut deeper than he realized. He showed me the timeline again. The late-night searches, the signs of stress, the way her energy dwindled over the last month, the final unbearable night where everything came crashing together. She was holding too much alone, he said. The emotional weight, the fear of divorce, the pressure of not wanting to disturb her daughter's stability. It became physically unsustainable. I nodded slowly. She didn't want to burden anyone. Not even you, he said quietly. Especially not you. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then, just when I thought I had absorbed all I could that day, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Pastor Raymond. I hadn't even known Mr. Carter had reached out to him. The pastor stepped in gently, hat in his hands, eyes weighed down by something he'd been carrying. I thought it was time, he said softly, to tell you something your daughter once told me. My breath caught. He sat beside me carefully, like he didn't want to break the space holding us all together. She came to see me privately about 3 months ago. She didn't say much. Marissa never complained. But that day, his voice wavered. She said she couldn't breathe in that house. The words knocked the air from my chest. Not metaphorically, literally. I felt myself fold inward. My hand pressed against my sternum as if trying to hold myself upright. She begged me not to tell you, he continued gently. She wanted to protect you from worry. She said you'd carry her pain like it was your own, and she didn't want that. Tears blurred my vision, hot and immediate. My daughter had been suffocating in her own home, and she thought the kindest thing she could do was keep me from knowing. I'm sorry, the pastor whispered. I honored her request, but it's haunted me. I shook my head slowly. She wasn't trying to hide. She was trying not to hurt anybody. Mr. Carter exhaled. This completes the picture. Deborah, emotional coercion, financial manipulation, minimization of symptoms, escalating stress, attempted escape, and silence, deep, suffocating silence. I wiped my face, breathing through the ache spreading through my chest. She tried so hard to survive without causing trouble, even when she was drowning. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. The truth filled the room like a storm cloud, dense, still, and undeniable. Finally, I stood. My hands were steady now, my voice firm, quiet, and certain. Gentlemen, I need to speak to Christopher. Mr. Carter looked at me carefully. Not alone. I know, I said. Not alone. But I will speak. The pastor nodded. Say the word. I'll stand with you. I inhaled slowly, the first full breath I'd taken since the funeral. My daughter hadn't been able to breathe in that house. I would breathe for her now, and I would ask the questions she never got to, because the time for silence had ended, and the confrontation was coming. Christopher agreed to meet us because he didn't know what we knew. That was the only reason a man like him would open his door to 3 people carrying truth like a storm behind them. The pastor walked at my left, Mr. Carter on my right, and I felt the shift inside myself. No longer the grieving mother stumbling through shock, but a woman stepping fully into the weight of what her daughter endured. When Christopher opened the door, his eyes flicked from me to the pastor to Mr. Carter. Surprise first, then caution, then that familiar mask, polite concern stretched thin over irritation. Deborah, he said, voice low, I wasn't expecting. We know, I interrupted. My tone was calm, measured, but it held shape like a blade, kept sheathed until it absolutely must be drawn. This won't take long. He hesitated, then stepped aside. The house felt colder than I remembered, as if grief had pulled out all the warmth and left the air hollow. We sat at the kitchen table, me at the head, Christopher across from me, the pastor and Mr. Carter flanking. I could feel a small presence in the hallway. Layla, her shadow stretched along the floor. She wasn't scared this time. She wasn't tiptoeing. She stood with her little hand on the wall, watching quietly. It steadied me in ways I didn't expect. Mr. Carter began, his voice even. We've reviewed phone records, financial documents, medical records, and your late wife's search history. Christopher stiffened. I don't know what that's supposed to. You minimized her symptoms. Carter continued. You delayed calling for help. You dismissed signs that any reasonable spouse would have taken seriously. Christopher's jaw tightened. We argued. Couples argue. She gets dramatic when she's overwhelmed. I inhaled slowly, fighting the urge to raise my voice. And you didn't think the chest pain she mentioned mattered. It was anxiety, he snapped, then softened. She always overthought things. The words struck me like cold water. My daughter was dying, and he labeled it overthinking. The pastor leaned in. Christopher, she came to me months ago. She said she couldn't breathe in this house. He blinked. For a moment, something cracked in his expression. Pride. Maybe denial. Shame fighting its way out. I told her we just needed time. He muttered. I told her things were tense because of the divorce. I didn't think she was that sick. I studied him carefully, and when she collapsed, his eyes lowered. I thought she'd get up. I needed a moment to calm down first. My breath caught. A moment. 22 minutes. I looked from him to the two men beside me, then back again. She tried to leave you. She filed for divorce. You knew that. He flinched. She blindsided me. I was angry. And you punished her with silence, I said softly, with neglect, with ignoring her pain because it wasn't convenient for you. His jaw tensed. I didn't kill her. No, I said. You didn't. But she died needing help you wouldn't give. He swallowed hard, eyes darting briefly to the hallway. Layla's small shadow didn't move. Mr. Carter slid the printed timeline forward. Christopher, these facts form a clear picture. You didn't cause her death by legal standards, but your choices, your dismissals, your delay directly contributed to the condition that killed her. That's the truth. Christopher's face crumpled, not into guilt, but into shame thick enough to make his shoulders collapse inward. His voice came out hollow. I thought she was just trying to get attention. I didn't know. I stared at him for a long moment, letting silence do what words couldn't. Behind me, I felt Layla shift, just slightly like she was witnessing something she'd never seen before, adults speaking out loud the things she had been taught to tiptoe around. Her tiny presence became my anchor, my reason to stay steady, my reason to finish what needed finishing. I finally leaned forward, my voice low and controlled. Christopher, we're almost done here. He lifted his eyes, hollow and trembling. I pushed the phone, the same one Layla handed me at the funeral, across the table. There's one more thing I need you to answer. His hand hovered above it, unsure. Why, I asked quietly, did you record that video? Christopher didn't answer me at first. His fingers hovered above the phone, like it was something radioactive, something that finally reflected him back to himself. His throat tightened. I saw it happen, a small movement like he was swallowing a stone he'd carried too long. I recorded it, he finally said, voice thin because she said she was leaving, and I got angry. I didn't blink. I didn't interrupt. I wanted the truth given whole, not trimmed to soften his conscience. He rubbed his hands together. She kept saying she needed space, and I thought if she watched herself cry on video, she'd realize she was being emotional. I didn't mean to threaten her. Yes, you did. I said quietly. You meant every word. His eyes filled with something sharp and messy, shame, not remorse. I thought it would make her stay. There it was, the real truth, not a monster's confession, but a small, selfish man who didn't understand the weight of his own cruelty. Mr. Carter folded the file shut. Christopher, this conversation ends here. Deborah will move forward with custody arrangements, support orders, and restitution. I strongly suggest you comply fully and quietly. Christopher didn't argue, not once, not after seeing the truth laid in front of him, like a mirror he could no longer walk past. By the end of that week, paperwork was filed, hearings scheduled. His attorney, shaken by the compiled evidence, advised him not to contest custody. He didn't, maybe because he finally understood what he had ignored for too long. Maybe because some part of him knew Layla deserved peace too. Layla came home with me, legally, permanently, quietly. A judge granted full custody to me with court-ordered therapy for her and mandatory counseling for him before future supervised visits. Not punishment, protection, healing. The financial restitution took longer, The court reviewed the coerced signatures, the rushed transfers, the credit lines opened in her name. Though it wasn't criminal, it was financially abusive. He was ordered to return what he drained and cover any debt created under her name through spousal protection statutes. I wasn't fighting him for money. I was restoring the balance my daughter tried to build for herself. The restoration wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, peaceful, just the way she always tried to live. A week later, the pastor held a private memorial for Marissa at the church, something soft and intimate, stripped of ceremony, built for healing instead of tradition. Just family, just truth, just breath. The room smelled like lilies and candle wax. A framed photograph of Marissa sat on the table. Her warm smile, her gentle eyes, her quiet spirit. There was no anger in the room, no bitterness, only the sound of hearts trying to rest after breaking. Layla stepped forward holding a drawing, her fingers ink-smudged from earlier. She placed the paper beside the photo, smoothing the corners with the seriousness only children possess. It was a picture of her mother. Simple lines, soft colors. Marissa standing with her hand on her chest, right where her heart was. Not dramatic, not frightening, just tender. She told me it hurt here, Layla whispered. So I drew it so she knows I remember. My knees weakened. The pastor placed a hand on my back to steady me, but it was Layla's steady breathing that pulled me back to myself. Children understand more than they can explain. They also heal in ways adults forget. I knelt beside her, wrapping my arms gently around her small shoulders. Her head leaned against me, light and warm, like a peace offering from the part of my daughter that still lived. The candles flickered. The room softened. The grief inside me loosened its grip just enough for air to come through. I pressed my lips to Layla's hair and whispered, not loud, not angry, but with a quiet certainty that felt like reclaiming my own breath. Baby, I said, will reclaim everything he tried to break.